Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the New South Wales Tender Round 9 webinar. My name is Jack Kratzat. I'm from the Corporate Affairs team here at ASL, and I'm joined by my colleagues Timo Muller, Jorge Miravete, Ross Anderson, Lachlan White, Josh Johnson, and James Hyatt. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians on whose land we're all on today. I pay my respects to elders past and present and extend my respect to any First Nations people joining us here today. I'm speaking to you from the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. So before we get into the substance of the presentation, just a few matters of housekeeping. So everyone's camera and microphone will be off, and the Q&A function in Teams is disabled as well. In place of that, we'll be using Slido to take questions. So this can be accessed through the QR code that you can see on the screen currently, and that QR code will stay on all the slides throughout the presentation. If you're unable to access Slido, please email your question to engagement@asl.org.au. And in today's Q&A session, we often receive very technical or project-specific questions that our view is we can't really answer those appropriately without further information or due consideration of the question being asked. So what we request is those more detailed types of questions are asked through the formal Q&A process instead, which is currently running, and registered proponents have access to that. If we do still get questions come through of this nature, we will bookmark them for the Q&A process and answer them through that. So rest assured that all the questions asked will still be answered either in this webinar or through our Q&A process, which we will make publicly available. So just a few words about ASL for those of you who aren't familiar with this. We are an independent for-purpose service provider established to support the delivery of energy commitments made by governments that will transform Australia's energy system. We're established around 4 years ago with our foundational role as the New South Wales Consumer Trustee, and our work is really focused on securing investment in new energy infrastructure that delivers positive energy system, consumer and community outcomes. From this foundational role, we've expanded to also providing tender delivery services for the Australian Government's Capacity Investment Scheme and to also support the South Australian Government's Firm Energy Reliability Mechanism scheme. More recently, we've also been engaged to support the Australian Government to undertake preparatory works for the establishment of the Electricity Services Entry Mechanism, which is one of the key recommendations coming out of last year's NEM review. So through this, we're acting as a joint convener of the industry-led contract co-design process, and we're supporting the early implementation work for this program ahead of the next ECMC meeting. So the purpose of today's webinar is really to give you a strong foundation that will support you in being able to prepare a high quality bid in this tender round 9. So the team will cover the key information you need to know on timelines and process, the LDS LTESA and its design, and importantly, an overview of our assessment framework, including what's new, and some of that is some recent changes to how we assess social value in particular. And of course, at the end of the presentation, we'll have the team on hand for any questions you may have. So that's me done, and I'll hand over to Timo Muller now, who will get us started. Thanks, Timo.
Thank you, Jack, and good afternoon, everyone. Let's start with a big picture. So this is our 5th round of LDS LTESA tenders, and we have the first LDS LTESA project, Liminal Battery, in operations now. So they achieved a commercial operations date a few days ago, and it is also the first 8-hour battery system in Australia. A second LDS LTESA project is currently under construction, and we expect more LTESA projects to achieve financial close this year. However, we are not done yet, and the nature of project development is that not all projects will achieve final investment decisions. So we have accounted for attrition in our tender plan. Tender round 9 plays an important role to further de-risking the achievement of our 2030 target, and we also maintain momentum towards the broader ambition of 42 gigawatt hours of LDS by 2034. New South Wales is a buyer of high-value projects, and we have, for this tender round, we have set an indicative target of 12 gigawatt hours, which is approximately 1.5 gigawatts of new LDS infrastructure. It's important to highlight that we are not simply looking for the lowest cost projects. The tender target is indicative, and we can award more or less than 12 gigawatt hours, depending on the quality of projects and the value they provide to New South Wales electricity consumers. What is important in our assessment, and the team will talk to that, the projects must have a credible pathway to achieving commercial operations. We are looking for competitive bids which deliver value for money and have a high social value. We are looking at projects that provide strong system benefits, which includes reduced electricity costs to New South Wales electricity consumers and improved reliability and system security contributions. I'll hand over to Ross Anderson now to take us through the LDS LTESA product.
Thanks, Timo, and hello, everyone, and thanks for your time today. Now provides a high-level introduction to the LDS LTESA and some of the key features to help you understand how it can support your project. So the LDS LTESA is designed to incentivise investment in LDS projects under the New South Wales Roadmap by increasing project cash flows and reducing cash flow volatility. The LDS LTESA achieves this by providing projects with a series of options to access a capped annuity payment as a top-up to its net operational revenues. In years with high operational revenues, operators share some of these revenues with the SFE in return for this increased revenue certainty. It's important to note that repayments are capped at historical payments made to the operator, meaning that at its core of the design, proponents should never be worse off with an LDS LTESA. The commercial model underpinning the LDS LTESA is based around two key variables, as shown on screen, the annuity cap and the net revenue threshold. The annuity cap represents the maximum amount per year that the SFE may pay to the operator, and the net revenue threshold is expected to represent the revenue required for project viability. When net operational revenues are below the threshold, payments are made to the operator, and the project has to earn revenues above the net revenue threshold before the repayment mechanism applies. Now we will turn to a quick run through of some of the key terms of the LDS LTESA. One of the main benefits of the LDS LTESA that we see is its long tenor. So for pumped hydro projects, we're offering a contract term of 40 years. For chemical batteries, we're offering 14 years. And for other LDS technologies, we're offering the lesser of either 40 years or your demonstrable asset life. We expect that the LDS LTESA will be longer than offtake agreements that you may be able to get from the market. The LDS LTESA has been designed to provide flexibility to the operator, allowing proponents to tailor their project's risk profile and financing needs. Big prices can be sculpted over periods. Annuity periods can be excluded, and projects may elect to exercise or not exercise an option for a given annuity period up to 6 months before the start of the relevant annuity period. And this flexibility allows proponents to seek the level of support required to make their project commercially viable while helping ensure value for New South Wales electricity consumers. The LDS LTESA is designed to integrate with both offtake contracts and merchant positions, which provides flexibility to operators and encourages projects to respond to market opportunities and make strategic decisions around how to operate the project. The quarterly annuity payment supports projects in managing their cash flow during low revenue periods. Proponents should note that both the annuity cap and revenue threshold both escalate at the lesser of CPI and 3% each year. On performance requirements, I'd like to highlight a change to the LDSL TESA for this round, and that we have introduced a storage rebate regime, additional to the requirement to maintain 8 hours of storage and the availability regime from previous tender rounds. This change aligns the LDS more closely with requirements in our other products. We have also provided further clarity on the annual storage testing definitions within the project documents to reduce uncertainty over how you will be assessed. Now, we also just wanted to quickly summarise some of the options available to you in providing default and alternative bids under MC1. You have the option to provide an alternative bid with a schedule of the key bid variables in both the annuity cap and net revenue threshold, as well as variable contract terms and excluded periods. A key point we do want to stress, though, is that both default and alternative bids will be assessed against the same merit criteria. Now, given that ASL is running Tender 8 for generation infrastructure concurrently with Tender Round 9 for LDS, we wanted to provide clarity as to how the pathway available to you if you have an LDS hybrid project. To participate in Tender Round 9, LDS hybrid projects may be separated into 2 distinct projects, comprising of a generation asset and a storage asset. Proponents should bid each component independently into the relevant tender as a non-assessed hybrid project. Practically, what this means for you is that you would bid one project as a non-assessed hybrid in Tender Round 8 for the generation asset, and another project as a non-assessed hybrid in Tender Round 9 for the LDS asset. Proponents should note that the operator under an LDSL TESA must be an SPV. This means that non-assessed hybrid projects for Tender Round 9 must ensure an SPV is established for the sole purposes of carrying on the storage asset only. In other words, the generation asset is not also part of the SPV. Thank you all very much. I'll now pass on to Jorge to provide an overview of the tender process.
Thanks, Ross, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for your time this afternoon. As outlined in our market briefing note, a single-stage process will be implemented for the Tender Round 9. This approach consolidates the assessment of eligibility, financial and non-financial value criteria into one comprehensive bid stage. This streamlined process has been designed to reduce the overall tender duration, allowing successful projects to be awarded LTESA sooner. It also simplifies submission requirements and provides proponents with a longer window to prepare the bids. Bids will be assessed against eligibility criteria and merit criteria as set out in the tender guidelines. Under this single-stage model, the merit assessment has been simplified from 9 criteria to 4. While each criteria carries a different weighting, we ultimately are seeking high-quality projects that perform strongly across all areas. For full details, proponents should refer to the tender guidelines, specifically Section 4.2, merit criteria. But by way of summary, I will walk you through some of the merit criteria at a high level. Starting with MC1. MC1 focuses on project's contribution to system reliability and its ability to reduce wholesale electricity market costs. It also considers the potential to reduce unserved energy and reliability risks in New South Wales, expected LTESA costs, maximum liability to electricity consumers, as well as overall system security benefits. Projects are assessed against multiple future scenarios to determine the value they deliver to consumers. MC1, as you might have noticed in the tender guidelines, is a critical component of the assessment, carrying a weighting of 49%. We will cover financial value and system benefit assessments in more detail shortly. Moving to MC2, MC2 assesses the project's pathway and progress towards achieving financial close and commercial operations by 31st of December 2029. This includes evaluating risks to timely delivery, as well as progress in securing approvals, land, and connection agreements. Proponents should demonstrate a clear and credible pathway to the nominated commercial operations date, COD. It is important to note that a well-evidenced and realistic timeline will be assessed more favorably, rather than an earlier but less credible one, stressing the point that Timo mentioned early in the presentation. MC2 carries a weight of 17%. Moving on to MC3. MC3 considers the capability of the proponent, including its contracting, delivery model, and financing strategy. It also examines the experience of and capability of key delivery partners, such as contractors and suppliers. This criterion looks at track record, access to development funding, and the ability to secure equity and debt financing to reach financial close and deliver the project. MC3 also carries a weight of 17%. And lastly, MC4 is focused on delivering meaningful and lasting social value for local communities and industry. This includes contribution to the local supply chain, employment, and workforce outcomes, First Nation participation, as well as shared community benefits. Proponents will be assessed on both the quality of the commitments and the confidence in the delivery. Importantly, this criterion includes a mandatory returnable schedule, which will become contractually binding if a proponent is successful. My colleague Josh will provide more details on MC4 in the upcoming slides. MC4 also carries a weight of 17%. Finally, proponents should be aware of specific eligibility requirements relating to projects intending to connect to renewable energy zones, as well as interactions with the capacity investment scheme agreements. In short, projects connecting to RES infrastructure are eligible, with further details on eligibility provided in section 4.1.1.2 of the tender guidelines. Now, in relation to CESAs, proponents should note that a project cannot hold both an LTESA and a CESA simultaneously. Thus, for those proponents participating in the Commonwealth's Capacity Investment Scheme, they must commit to not executing a CESA if they get awarded an LTESA in this tender round, and vice versa. Now I'll pass it on to my colleague Lachlan, who will provide a financial value and system benefits deep dive.
Thank you, Jorge. As Jorge outlined, MC1 is a critical element of the bid assessment, and it has a weighting of 49%. The MC1 assessment will evaluate financial value and system benefits of a project across a range of benefit and cost metrics, and the key metrics for assessment are shown on screen across the light blue boxes. These are expected to be wholesale market benefit to cost ratio, or BCR, reliability contribution, system strength contribution, and system security services. To calculate the financial value metrics, proponents must submit their bid variables and project parameters in their MC1 returnable schedule. You would also submit your project documents with those variables captured there as well, and complete the bid form to support the assessment. Components like wholesale market benefits are modeled using the bid variables and project parameters to best reflect the project being put forward. Each component of the assessment will be translated into a financial value metric, which is then used for MC1 scoring. So now to explore each metric a little bit more. BCR is expected to be a primary metric for MC1 scoring. It's calculated by dividing wholesale market benefits by net LTESA cost, where wholesale market benefits forecast the reduction in wholesale electricity market costs due to the addition of the project, and that's based on comparing electricity market modeling outcomes both with and without the project. Wholesale market benefits are intended to reward strong network locations, longer storage durations, and not being in operation before July 2025. Net LTESA cost forecasts the cost to the scheme financial vehicle, or the SFV, which may be incurred under an LTESA, so it's the LTESA costs themselves. And that is a net value of potential payments to the project and repayments back to the SFV. It is calculated using electricity market modeling, which takes into account the bid variables and project parameters to best reflect the project's potential revenues in the market. Both wholesale market benefits and net LTESA cost are modeled across multiple electricity market scenarios, which represent a range of possible future market outcomes, which cover a variety of market price and volatility outcomes. Now into the second box, it's the reliability contribution, and that is also expected to be a primary metric for MC1 scoring. This metric is used to assess a project's potential ability to reduce unserved energy in different forecast horizons. It considers a combination of location and duration factors, and it's modeled across multiple forecast horizons, which are expected to include a medium-term horizon, focusing on broad New South Wales risks in the medium term, with major network limitations largely resolved, and Eraring having been retired. A long-term horizon then reflects a horizon where all coal plant in New South Wales are retired, and it would include higher levels of variable renewable energy generation. There's also specific long-term low VRE analysis, and that's based on the long-term scenario, but focuses on a single historical weather reference year where lower than normal VRE, or variable renewable energy generation, contributes the most to unserved energy. System strength, contribution, and system security are the final two metrics. These are intended to consider the ability of a project to contribute to system strength requirements in New South Wales, including any ability to avoid or defer the procurement of network solutions, and provide fault level support, and also consider any cost of system strength remediation for projects. System security services is in the final box here, and projects in New South Wales Tender Round 9 will be assessed on their ability to provide other essential system services that can support the grid. I'll refer the audience to the MC1 market briefing note published on our website for more detail on characteristics of high-performing bids in previous tender rounds and further detail on the calculation of both components and the metrics. Thank you all, and with that, I'll pass over to Josh.
Thanks, Lockie. Hi, everyone. I'm Josh Johnson, ASL's Technical Lead for Social Value. I'm joining you from Gadigal and Wongal country today. Social value is critical to an equitable energy transition, delivering real benefits for industry, local communities, and First Nations peoples. In MC4, commitments are assessed holistically using quantitative commitments, qualitative inputs, financial proxies, and discount factors. Looking at quantitative commitments, they are captured in the mandatory tabs 4 to 8 of the MC4 returnable schedule. These are binding financial commitments across 4 equally weighted domains, which you can see on the left-hand side of the screen. These are then converted into comparable financial units of social value using Consumer Price Index adjusted financial proxies. Turning our attention to qualitative inputs, they are captured through the new local needs analysis in mandatory tabs 1 to 3, alongside bid form responses and supporting evidence. These collectively inform the quality and confidence discount factors, which are applied across each domain. Quality considers how well commitments respond to local needs and the strength of supporting evidence. Confidence considers the credibility of delivery, strategies, and the proponent's track record. What this looks like in practice is strong, targeted, and evidence-based commitments may receive lower discounts, while weaker or generic commitments may receive higher discounts. To achieve high merit in MC4, proponents need to show clear alignment to local needs, supported by credible evidence, delivery strategies, and capability. The LNA has been introduced this round to ensure social value commitments are informed by local needs, stakeholder priorities, and evidence. There are 3 key components across tabs 1 to 3. First is stakeholder priorities, a summary of key issues and opportunities identified through engagement with communities, industry, and First Nations stakeholders. Second is local needs. That is translating those priorities into clearly defined needs supported by evidence and data. The third is a theory of change, explaining how social value commitments will deliver outputs, outcomes, and long-term social value. Each tab within the MC4 returnable schedule includes step-by-step guidance, with further information available in the New South Wales Roadmap Social Value Market Briefing Note and relevant tender guidelines. Additional non-tender specific market education resources, which do not form part of the formal tender assessment, are also available in the ASL Social Value Toolkit, also available on our website. Back over to you, Jack.
Thanks, Josh. So a few final things before we wrap up the presentation. First, a recording of this webinar will be uploaded to ASL's website in the coming days. So the tender is currently open for bids. If you're new to the process, you are required to create an account in the online portal in order to register a project and submit a bid. You can access this portal through the Tender 9 page on ASL's website. All the relevant documents for Tender 9 can also be found on our website. And importantly, the tender guidelines are the primary source of information and contain all the information necessary that you need to know to participate in this tender. As I mentioned earlier, the tender Q&A process is currently running and will close on the 26th of June at midday. You can access the Q&A platform through the online portal once you have submitted a registration. And just to reiterate the other 2 key timeframes, they are registrations closing the 22nd of June at 5 p.m. and bids closing on Monday, the 6th of July at 10 a.m. So that's all from us. We will now move over to the Q&A. Thank you. So we'll just give it a moment while it comes up on slide. There we are. So the first question, which I'll just take myself, and I did kind of answer at the very end there, which is, will we be sent copies of slides after the webinar? So yes, effectively you will be. We will upload a copy of the recording and the slides on our Tender 9 webpage, and we will also send out an email to everyone who registered or attended today with access to those and all the written responses to the questions that have come through the the webinar Q&A process. So the next question, I think Lockie will go to you for that one. And I think what they're asking here is just whether the project is able to segregate, or can the project use a segregation of the megawatt hours behind the meter to fulfill the 8-hour requirement? Example, can a 300 megawatt, 1200 megawatt hour project submit a 100 megawatt, 800 megawatt hour LDS bid and retain the 200, 400 for, let's say, merchant exposure or however they please? And I think what this question is also getting at is kind of a key difference between SA Firm and the Firma product and the LDS LTESA. So I'll hand over to you for that one. Thanks, Lockie.
Thanks, Jack, and thanks for the question as well. So the example doesn't match the intent. Instead, the LDS LTESA is expected to relate to the full project that's being built and operated. The LDS LTESA for this tender round doesn't include provisions for portioning a project to meet 8-hour requirements. And for example, it doesn't include a contracted percentage like you see in the generation LTESA, whereby only a portion of capacity would be contracted to the LTESA and some other remainder capacity could remain uncontracted and operate outside the requirements of the LTESA. So we expect that the LDS LTESA describes the full project being built and that the full project meets the operating conditions that are 8 hours at its relevant capacity, which is then the lesser of maximum capacity or registered capacity for a project. Thanks, Jack.
Thanks, Lockie. We'll stick with you for the next one at the top as well while you're off camera.
Mm-hmm.
Does a lower annuity cap always improve your MC1 score?
Yep, also a good question. So a lower annuity cap is an important variable, and generally can reduce net LTESA cost and will reduce the maximum liability forecast for a project. It's important to note, of course, that MC1 scoring is based on a very broad set of metrics, including wholesale market benefits, the reliability contribution, systems strength contribution, and system security services. So changing one parameter won't always move the dial significantly on the total MC1 outcome. So MC1 can be improved by reducing the annuity cap, but it's one part of a broader assessment. Naturally, a lower annuity cap is likely to improve competitiveness, but proponents will need to balance providing competitive bid prices with credible project pricing that achieves sufficient revenue support to ensure the project is delivered and ultimately does provide the benefits as assessed. So it's a real trade-off for the proponents to make in how they set those prices.
Thanks, Lockie. Jorge, we'll go to you next with this one, which is the MC2 pathway to commercial operations by 2029 or 2034 or both?
Yeah, thanks, Jack. Thanks for asking that question. Look, projects must demonstrate a credible pathway to the nominated COD and will be assessed under NC2, having regard to the achieved milestones, the key risks and mitigation strategies. A later COD, what this means is that a later COD may still perform favorably, but the project must demonstrate a credible and lower risk delivery pathway. Table 1 of section 4.2 of the tender guidelines provide further details on this.
Thanks, Jorge. And I guess just one thing I'll add to that, which appreciate there can be a bit of confusion for LDS proponents. Under the EII Act, ASL has minimum objectives for the construction and operations of LDS by both these two dates, 2030 and 2034, which is why you might see the language which could confuse you having regard to projects that can reach COD by those two different dates. James, we'll go to you next. So is my project eligible under eligibility criterion 7 if it has achieved development approval but requires a modification to suit the LDS project specifications.
Thanks, Jack. So the intent behind EC7 is that a project has clarity about the process that they need to go through to get to development approval or DA. And so a project which has already achieved DA but needs to go through a modification process is likely to be, is expected to be considered by the consumer trustee to comply with EC7, and proponents in such a situation are encouraged to participate in the tender round, noting that the exercise of discretion on EC7 is a decision of the ASL board acting as a consumer trustee.
Thanks, James. We've just had one other. Sorry, I'll just go to the second one in the list first, which was at the top, which is to you, Lockie. Can we propose different CODs in alternative bids? And then we'll jump back to the top and go to you, Josh.
No, the intent is that alternative bids are used to only modify the bid variables and support commercial innovation against a specific list of those bid variables. So an alternative bid should not be used to modify project configuration or key milestone dates, including COD. Proponents can refer to section 3.2.3 in the tender guidelines, and there's a table listing out the bid variables that can be amended in the alternative.
Thanks, Lockie. Josh, we'll go to you next, which is the new local needs requirement unique to LTESA tenders, or will this be introduced to CIS tenders as well? Before I go to you, Josh, I might just start by saying, obviously, this is a webinar for the New South Wales Roadmap Tenders, so we aren't going to speak on behalf of the Australian government by saying specifically what they might and might not do with regards to their policy objectives for the CIS. Sorry, Josh, over to you if you have anything to add on the local needs requirement.
Yeah, no, that's correct. Yeah, the local needs analysis is relevant to the New South Wales Roadmap Tenders, and any changes to the CIS will be communicated if, when, and if they apply.
Thank you. Sorry, we've just had another one jump up to the top thanks to a like. So Ross, that'll be for you, which is, do we need a separate SPV for our storage project where our project is a hybrid?
Thanks, Jack, and thanks for the question. Short answer is yes. In accordance with clause 4.4 of the LTESA, an SPV must have the sole purpose of carrying on the LDS portion of the project. This is such that the bid entity is the SPV for the purposes of contracting. And I'd refer proponents to table 1 of the tender guidelines also, which might be able to help.
Thanks, Ross. Over to you now, Lockie, with the next one, which is, do grid forming inverters improve scoring?
Maybe to bring it down a level, then system strength and system security capabilities are considered under merit criteria 1. Grid forming inverter technologies could improve scoring then in MC1 against the system strength and security assessment. Proponents, as part of the project documents, must nominate if the project will be either synchronous, which would generally be rewarded in that same assessment, or if they'll use grid forming inverters over grid following. So versus grid following inverter technologies, it's likely that they would have a higher score using grid forming in MC1. Similarly, synchronous could also have a higher score against that assessment.
Thanks, Lockie.
Sorry, to support it as well, I was just going to add, as part of the bid form, proponents are expected to provide supporting evidence to allow for that assessment to be more robust.
Thanks, Lockie. Just before we jump on to the next question, I want to note we are getting quite a few questions on SPVs in the background, which are getting quite specific. So what the team is going to do is they're going to take all those on notice, and we will look into each of them as they relate to the circumstances outlined, and we will publish written responses to them. So we're not going to answer them here, but please do note that we will provide an answer to them. So the next one up James, I'll throw to you for this one, even though it's referencing Jorge in response to his other question. So on the COD of 2029, the tender guidelines refer to COD for 2033 too. Please confirm if COD is likely to be 2030, would a project be penalized? I think this is just, going back to those two different time horizons.
Yeah, definitely. And it is kind of a complex one there, so happy to talk it through. In terms of the MC2 assessment and kind of what we're really looking for proponents is a credible COD that has clear pathway. You've thought about all the risks to that COD date, regardless of when the project is hitting COD, as long as it can contribute to our infrastructure objectives, which is to be reaching COD by the end of 2033. We, as Jack outlined before, we do have two infrastructure objectives that after the MC2 assessment, which is a risk-based assessment of how you are going to reach COD and have you thought about all the risks and have you got a clear pathway. We then have in section 3.4 of the tender guidelines, as part of our shortlisting considerations, we do then consider how the projects and the portfolio of projects will best contribute to meeting the objects of the EII Act, which include those two specific objectives, one for 2029 and one for 2033. So in terms of answering the direct question, a COD in 2030 for a project to be penalised, not in MC2 and not necessarily at all, where it has a clear pathway to COD and as a portfolio is contributing to the meeting of those IIO objectives for LDS, which as a consumer trustee, ASL is looking to achieve.
Thanks, James. And I think it obviously goes without saying, but obviously we have a long-term rolling 10-year tender plan, but particularly for those LDS projects that we want in the system by 2030, we are sort of getting to those tenders where we really need to be bolstering that pipeline as well as that longer term horizon one. Ross, we'll go to you with this one on duration. So what happens if the storage duration falls below 8 hours over the time, or the life of the project rather, let's say?
Thanks, Jack, and thanks for the question. Maybe just a little bit of sort of context and background on this one. Like the 8-hour requirement is really important, and it's fundamental part of what the definition of LDS is under the roadmap. So it's a really important requirement that needs to be met throughout the term of the LTESA. And so failure to meet this requirement could result in either application of rebates, there's a remedy plan regime in the LTESA, or in the extreme scenario, termination there. So, and I guess maybe just an opportunity as well to call out, sort of following on from discussion in the slides there, that one of the main changes to the LDS LTESA for this round was around, we look at, I guess there's two separate issues that are dealt with under the LTESA of what happens if your storage is less than your contracted storage amount, and what happens if you're less than 8 hours, and there's different pathways for each in the contract.
Thanks, Ross. So the next one we will go to Lockie. So will the average annuity caps and revenue thresholds from the previous successful LDS tenders be shared?
Yes. So generally we share the average bid prices for the annuity cap, but not net revenue threshold, as part of the market briefing outcomes document published on the ASL website. So if proponents refer to the New South Wales T6 outcomes briefing on the ASL website, then you can find the average equivalent annuity cap and average equivalent annuity payment in a table, and that actually reflects all previously awarded projects as well as the tender round 6 outcomes. This time It wasn't part of the webinar slides, but it's online.
Thanks, Lockie. And it's super easy to find as well. Once you go onto ASL's website, at the top, there is sort of a navigation tab that says tenders, New South Wales Tender 6, and it's there on the homepage. A link to it is there on the homepage that you can access online. Jorge, question on financing. How firm must financing be? I'm assuming this is in relation to, for MC2, does everything need to be all lined up and, ready to sign the dotted line, or, a strategy, a plan, etc.?
Yeah, thanks, Jack, and thanks to the person who asked the question. Look, financing capability, including funding strategies, arrangements, that's all assessed under MC3. The tender guidelines and the bid form will require proponents to provide information relating to the financing strategy, development funding, and evidence supporting the proposed delivery and financing approach. So it's a risk-based assessment, and yeah, hope this answers the question.
Thanks, Jorge. We'll stick with you for this next one, which is, can an existing project or expansion project participate?
Sorry, was that to me?
Yeah, sorry, Jorge. We'll go to you again for that one. Have we got you with this, Jorge?
No, we're gonna have to pass this one to somebody else. Sorry.
No, you're all good.
I think I can take that one, Jack. I think in terms of existing projects and expansion projects, where those projects are looking to participate in the LDS tender, the proponents need to make sure that they satisfy all of the eligibility criteria in and of themselves. That includes for existing projects where that project was in service under AEMO's generation information page, which both is an eligibility criteria as well as something considered under MC1 in terms of whether that project provides additional wholesale market benefits. So proponents should look at the tender guidelines through sections 3 and 4 to ensure that those the project as being bid, whether it's an expansion or existing, meets all of the requirements and how it will be assessed, which is all set out there.
Thanks, James. So we've got 1 minute left until the end of the webinar. So we've done about, I think, 20 minutes of questions now, and we have not really made a significant dent in the amount we've had come through, which is really pleasing to see. So we'll end the questions there. Just want to thank everyone for joining us today and for your interest in the webinar and the tender. A reminder again that registrations close on the 22nd of June, 5 p.m. and bids close on Monday, 6th of July at 10 a.m. We would really love feedback from those that have attended, just so we can ensure that all future webinars are actually providing useful, valuable, and targeted information. So if you have a few minutes to spare, please do scan the QR code on the screen and share your feedback with us. And then finally, as we said, a recording of this webinar will be made available on our website, and we will provide written answers to all the questions we have received in the webinar. So even those that we haven't got through, we will consider them and provide answers to share with everyone. We'll publish those on our website. So thank you once again. We really appreciate your time and hope everyone has a great afternoon.